Hello everybody, hope you're having a wonderful day today, and this is lesson number 16 in our dive into the wonderful world of musical theory. And today our topic is bars. Bars. So I would like you to draw your attention to the music I have got written down here, and for once not to the music itself, but to these little lines that have been made on the staff. See this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. What are these lines? Why are we using them? Well, these lines, my friends, are called bar lines. So these lines, which are coming on the staff, are called bar lines, and the space between these bar lines are called bars. For example, this is one bar line of one bar of music. This is one bar of music because it falls between two bar lines, and these bar lines. Now, if I let me just draw a makeshift staff here. You draw them from the top of the staff until the bottom. There, it does not go from here or from there. This goes from the top of the staff all the way to the bottom, and that's it. It ends there, it ends there. Now, one notable exception to this is when you're writing on the grand staff, which is unfortunately where I got this music from. So you can see it's kind of continuing on there, but in a regular piece of music it stops, so it's just on the staff and that's it. Okay, so these lines are called bar lines, and the spaces between them, those sections, are called bars. What are they? Why are we using them? Well, bars and bar lines help us to compartmentalize music. So instead of this, flurry of music, we have neat little sections of music, neat little batches or sets or whatever you want to call them. We divide all the never-ending bunch of notes into neat little sections for our consumption, and that's what bar lines are. That's why we use them, and that's what bars and bar lines are. Now, your natural next question is, okay, how do we place them? Do we place them equidistantly, or are some notes supposed to come in some bars? How does that work? Well, I would submit to you that that has a lot to do with something called time signature. Time signature, and in fact, bars and time signatures are very closely linked, right? They both refer to each other, and time signature is going to be my very next lesson, and that's a very important and big lesson, so I encourage you to tune in for that. But point is, these are very closely linked, and that's why I thought I would introduce bars before I talked about time signatures. But and that we'll be talking about once again how to place bars and which note goes in which bars on next lesson. So for this lesson, I don't want to talk about that. I more want to talk about what bars are and why we use them. So dismissing that question of how, where, and how we place bars, which we'll talk about next lesson. The natural next question is, why do we use bars? Now I just told you that bars help us compartmentalize music, right? These bar lines and the bars in between them help us compartmentalize music. But why would I want to do that? Well, there are really three main answers to that, three main reasons we want to do this. Number one, using bars makes music easy to read, because, and the reason that is, instead of just reading a bunch of free floating notes, I can read it as separate batches or separate sections. So I'm okay, I play section 1 and section 2 and section 3 and section 4, right? And I can play them one after another. And as a musician myself, I can tell you it makes it significantly easier to read and comprehend. It's much easier to read and comprehend music when it's in terms of bars than it is if you're free floating, right? And as you can see, these durations are very long. Just, in this example, there's just 4 notes per bar, so it makes it exponentially easier to read when you have these bars. Number two reason why we use bars is because they help outline the pulse of the music. The bars help us outline the pulse of the music, and that once again has to do with time signatures, right? But generally, if I snap my fingers every time a bar started a piece of music, maybe let me do that for Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So it'll be like this: Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, how I wonder what you are, up above the sky so high, like a diamond in the sky. As you can see, it's very much in sync with the pulse of the music, and that's something that's very important with bars, and that's another reason it helps us. Now, number three is that it makes us easier to pinpoint places in music. So when I want to refer to a specific part of music, or when I want to refer to a specific place, we almost always use bars. You'll hear people in rehearsal shouting up, oh, go to bar number 53 or bar number 7. Or when you want to talk about a period of music, okay guys, we're going to be practicing from bar number 15 to bar number 57. Get your violins ready. Something like that, right? And it makes it much easier to pinpoint exact places in the music. I can say, oh, this is bar number 1, or this is bar number 2, 3, and so on and so forth. And that's another reason why we use bars, because it makes it a lot easier from that standpoint to pinpoint both points in music and periods of music. You can say from bar 1 to bar 3, or anything similar to that. So bars make it much easier to do that. And number 4 is a much more philosophical one, but it helps in outlining musical sentences and phrases. Now you don't have to get into exactly what these are. This is mostly more in the analysis of melody and all that stuff, much more philosophical reason. But as we outlined, the bars are very much in sync with the pulse of the music. And when you have these kind of bars, it really helps when you're phrasing. So this is something where music people, sorry, music people, musicians do when they are playing music is you may not notice it, but they think in terms of sentences. Like we have sentences in English. Hello, my name is Agastya. I live in 34th Street. Those were two separate sentences. They might have been related, but they were two separate sentences. Similarly, we have these kind of sentences in music, and bars help us. Bars is sort of the language where we stop and say, okay, from bar number 1 to 4, that's one sentence. And indeed 4 bars are known as a phrase, and you'll hear phrases everywhere, and 8 bars are known as a period. So when you're phrasing and when you're trying to speak in terms of these sentences rather than in terms of just each and every single note, when you're doing that, bars are very useful. They help outline the places where a musical sentence starts and ends, the sense of musicality, the feeling that the musician's putting into the music is also about phrasing and moving around these musical sentences. So this one's much more loosey-goosey philosophical reason, right? But it is very important. So as I said, that sense of musicality comes very much from phrasing and paying attention to where musical sentences start and end. And the natural language for that is bars. So just recap. Bar lines are these lines we put on stuff which compartmentalize the music neatly up into small batches, right? Between two bars space, the music that falls there is 1 bar worth of music. So between 2 bar lines, the space that falls in between 2 bar lines, that's 1 bar worth of music. Now how do we place these bars? We'll talk about them when we talk about time signatures, but I will lend you this. Usually these bars are of equal duration. Usually these bars have equal duration. Hopefully you may have noticed that when I was singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. But as for how we do it, we'll talk about that when we come to time signatures. Now, why do we use bars? Number one, it makes the music much easier to read because you can think of it as batches or sections. From experience, I can tell you that's very much true. Number one, it helps outline the pulse of the music. I already talked about how this works, and it's because it's linked to time signature, and it helps outline the pulse or the flow of the music. Number three, it's very easy to pinpoint places in music, sections of music, or points in music using bars. So I can say bar number 5, bar number 7, let's start from bar number 57, or bar number 3 to 5, that's what we really need to focus, and etc, etc. And finally, it helps in outlining the places where musical sentences are present. And those, like we have sentences in English, there are also sentences in music. And we may cover those at sometime in the future, but all I wanted to say for this one is more it's a philosophical thing which helps us with musicality, bringing the feeling into music. And they are, like we have sentences in English, there are both phrases, periods, and multiple different levels of sort of musical statements or sentences, and we do divide music like this. As I said, 4 bars is usually constituted as what's known as a phrase, and 8 bars is usually constituted in what's known as a period, but we'll talk about that probably sometime in the future. Anyway, these are the 4 main reasons, for 3 to 4 if you count this one or not, why we use bars, and they do make our musicians' lives, composers' lives, everyone's life a lot easier when we use bars in music. So that's why we use them essentially. That being said, I just wanted to introduce the concept of bars because later we're going to be talking about time signatures, and these are very important for that. That being said, hopefully you gained something very valuable from this lesson. Hopefully you learned something new, and I was able to sort of reach out to you. Um, And yeah, that's it from my side. That's all I wanted to cover. uh, Hopefully I may wish you a very nice day ahead, and see you next lesson. Thank you very much. Bye.